Hello all you mercenaries, I'm King Link and this is my last look and review of Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing. It helps me and helps you find my content. Ring the bell if you need extra help with that. Thank you. So, we finally reached the end of the humble monthly bundle for December 2018 with Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. It's one of the most interesting games I've ever had to review, I think, and I was quite surprised by it. I played the game originally on the PlayStation 4 and enjoyed it, but remembered it having issues, so it's great to come back and take another fresh look at it. Now graphically, the Phantom Pain here can be impressive. There's a number of moments in this game that are just stunning. Every cutscene and enclosed area looks amazing, though the game is based on an open world, so the idea is you have longer view distances than amazing graphics, and sadly, this is a touch of a flaw. The game looks great, but much of the early game is in a sandy, ugly Afghanistan. The game doesn't have many interesting interiors, and while the engine is good, the experience doesn't always shine. It's still impressive to have graphical quality with the view distances it has to maintain. Similar to Ground Zeroes, the game focuses on using binoculars to see targets at a distance, and it works very well, as you'll see in the video. The story, though, and narrative of the Phantom Pain is quite weak. I go into this far more detail in my written review, but the big parts are the story is elusive. The first mission is very strong, perhaps too strong, giving the players an incorrect view of how story-driven the game will be. After that point, the game trades the story for the open-world gameplay. And while the open-world gameplay is good, this is still supposed to be a Metal Gear Solid game, at least as far as I know and the title knows. After that, the first mission, the player has to chase the story in almost any place. There are audio tapes that intended to flesh out the story, but it heavily violates the show don't tell rule. Audio recordings in a visual and interactive medium, it just feels kind of weak. There are strong story-heavy missions, but they pop up out of nowhere, and so much of the development of the narrative is done outside of these missions. Worse, the pacing is awful. The 6th mission is story-driven, for instance, as is the 12th, but in the 6th mission, the game hints at a very large mecha, probably the titular Metal Gear. The 12th mission just shows it to the player, calls it a name, and this is the big Metal Gear that the game has been building towards. Problem is, you also destroy it in that mission. 2 missions and you've already blown it up. Then you wait another 10 missions for another big thing to happen. Now, there are 2 chapters in The Phantom Pain, and I use that term loosely, but it is what they call it. Chapter 1 has 31 missions. Less than half of them really have a tie to the story. But again, the pacing is very weird. You know, you have the 6th mission and the 12th mission, and then all of a sudden the 26th through the 31st mission are all story missions, and each one ends with a to be continued, and it's a big continuity block. They're actually the only missions that do it that way, but it's such a heavy run that comes out of nowhere, and the only part of the game that delivers the story in that manner. In fact, Chapter 2 gets much worse in my opinion. There's only 5 new full missions in Chapter 2, and there's a ton of remix missions that are made harder by some new rules, but they aren't required by the game. However, the story moves to the side ops, which are the small filler moments of the game rather than big blockbusters at all. And the fact is, none of this feels right for a Metal Gear Solid game. The development of the multiple storylines included in the game are done well, but most of them don't go anywhere or just discarded at the end of the game. In fact, the main villain that you build up this huge I need to take him down feeling to dies in a horrible way without a major confrontation between you and him. And there's really only one conclusion I've been able to make out of all of this. I feel that Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain is unfinished, and I don't think that's a radical take or a new take, but it's the take that I get after replaying the game and trying to find the core of the game outside of the controversy that was happening around the original game. Now there's more to that, of course, with some backstory of the Konami and Kojima splitting up that I'll touch on in the written review, but overall it's really hard to play this story without wanting more or feeling that the game is incomplete. There's a huge piece at the end that just doesn't get resolved, and I really wish I had the full Phantom Pain story. Now what's really sad to me is that chapter 1 is actually decent for the story. It's just that the second chapter tends to add a lot more complexity to it, but it doesn't finish that new complexity or the new parts of the story in a complete narrative. So, yeah, the story's weak, but let's move on to the gameplay. And now, where the story's really failing the series, the one thing that the Phantom Pain excels at is evolving the gameplay to all new levels. A lot of games are called open world games, starting back with the Grand Theft Auto 3 coming to the present, and the term seems to use to be described mission structures, but it's actually how you approach missions. Players can do the story and side missions of these games in any order, and experience the game that they want to. However, Phantom Pain improves on this. Snake is given all new abilities in the Phantom Pain and is able to attack missions as he wants. Whether the player wants to go loud or quiet, to sneak in without interacting with anyone, or to clear the base completely, to kill or to knock out or even capture each target, there's always a way to do it in the Phantom Pain. The game almost seems to accept every crazy idea the player has, such as riding his extractions on top of a container. He can actually exfiltrate that way from missions. Even if he's told to eliminate a specific target, the game will accept either capture or kill or any other way to deal with them. Even to gain intel, the players are usually informed a specific location for a mission to get important intel, but it's actually never needed, as the ultimate goal is wherever it should be. The intel just gives you the final location, and players can actually interrogate people or just pay attention to guard patrols to find their targets. There's also buddies who might smell out enemies, like in this game I wanted to find some prisoners, I have D-Dog with me. There's also a scouting bases using a certain sniper. And all of these things can detect your targets as well. You don't need to approach the mission exactly as it explains it. The mission is firm, but how you actually achieve it is always in flux is the point. Actually, the capture system too, and I'll use it a little bit here, is a major benefit. The game adds the Fulton Extraction system, which is attaching a balloon to a knocked out or sleeping guard and flying him back to Mother Base or Outer Heaven or whatever they're calling it. From there, the player can manage units back in his base to develop weapons and have better success on optional missions or just better intel and support options. All of this stuff is actually an interesting addition to the game, and honestly I had so much fun playing with it. But the Fulton Extraction is a good example of a system that allows the player to do what they want. As the player knocks out guards, they can be woken up. However, if you extract them, they disappear with no trace for other guards to find, though they could see the balloon, so it's a risk-reward system. Now, there was one mission I remember playing where I was supposed to go to a first location, watch a convoy and track it, then get to the second location, steal the prisoner, and it sounds easy, but I found a different way. I actually got into the way of the convoy, because it stops at one point. I blew up the tank in the convoy. This made the driver and passenger who were in the car with the prisoner get out to look at the destroyed tank. I snuck up to the car, extracted the car, which took the prisoner with it, and then ran away as fast as I could. This actually completed the objective extremely fast, got me an S rank, and probably was not the intended solution, but it works just the same and the game gave me the thumbs up for it. Over time though, the game also responds to your tactics. There's a dynamic difficulty system in the game, and I really like this part. If you do a lot of Fulton extractions, the enemy starts calling it out or popping the balloons. If you do too many headshots, the enemy starts wearing helmets, making it harder. This increases the difficulty, but doesn't make it impossible. It's a great way for the game to force the player to consider changing his tactics, and it works rather well. Even changing your tactics will change the response the enemy has, such as if you move away from headshots and go to CQC, the helmets start getting removed, but some enemies will start fighting back from a holdup. All of this makes for an incredible open world experience in an ever-evolving game, and it's one I wish more games had considered, because the Phantom Pain really stands out for its gameplay. Like I said earlier, I have more, and I'll leave that to the written review. I could probably spend over 30 minutes discussing this game, both good and bad, and I put in over 50 hours into the game, and I'm quite happy with my time. I didn't dive into the multiplayer, whether it be the FOP or the online, but after 50 hours, I don't know if the game really needed either, and since one was a little flush with microtransactions, I believe the other one probably would be too. I'm fine skipping those personally. Ultimately, The Phantom Pain is a failure for the Metal Gear Solid franchise. The story doesn't work, it's poorly told, and ends abruptly, and that's really not what the series has been about. There are great moments with the story, but I wish Kojima had the time to tell it properly rather than getting a game that feels rushed out. Yet, the gameplay in The Phantom Pain is so rewarding and enjoyable. The Fulton Extractions are so much fun to do, and just completing each mission so effectively is enjoyable. Overall, I give The Phantom Pain a 4 out of 5. That could have been so much higher. It definitely was reaching 4.5 and all, but the story really brings it down. I'm actually amazed at how much fun I had playing The Phantom Pain, and it's because the gameplay is so well designed. Kudos to both Konami and Kojima for that. If you do want to play this game for the story, well, you probably already have, but it's okay for that. It's just not one of the great Metal Gear Solid stories. But running around and sneaking through enemy territory is so well done here, I can almost forgive it. Almost. And that's The Phantom Pain. I'll be honest, I'm actually surprised I enjoyed it so much, as I remember being slightly upset with the game the first time I played it, mostly because I was playing it for the story. Coming up next, though, we'll have The World of Final Fantasy. I played it before Ground Zeroes and City Skylines, and we'll talk about that next time. Until then, I'm King Link, and thank you for watching.